Hello stitchy friends. Welcome to Cross My Stitches. My name is Jackie and I'm here today to share with you some tips and tricks that I have learned along the way while I've cross-stitched these many years. And some of the information you might already know and some of it you may not, so I thought it would just be fun to share, and maybe you'll pick up an idea or of the way I do something that might work for you to make stitching easier. So let's get started. So the first thing we're going to talk about is floss. Floss has a grain, okay? All floss has a grain. I'm going to move this stuff out of the way. Leave these on here so I don't lose them. Okay. Embroidery floss comes with twisted length made of 6 strands that must be separated before stitching can begin. Even though the floss looks perfectly uniform, it does have a grain. By following the grain, you lessen the wear and tear on your thread as you draw it through the fabric. The results in stitches that look smoother and silkier. Okay, so to find the grain, you're going to cut your length of thread, and you're going to grab both ends of your thread about a 1/2 inch from, oh, I don't like that that's bent. Hold on a minute, let me get a straighter piece here. There we go. Okay, so you're going to hold your thread about a 1/2 inch up from your finger. Keep them separated, so this is what it looks like. And you're going to tap each end. And you're going to notice one of them's going to separate, one's not. Do you see that? This one is separating, this one is not. This is the end you want to pull your thread from when you're pulling thread out of your skein. So we're going to pull that thread. And that is the thread, or the 2 threads, or the 3 threads, that you want to thread through your needle and be the short end. So this is going to be the short end of your thread, and this is how you're going to stitch, like this. This will keep your stitches laying flatter and looking smoother, and it also will save a little wear and tear on your thread as you're stitching. So that's my first tip, to figure out the grain and go with the grain of the thread. Now let's talk about thread fraying, because this is one of my pet peeves, is when threads fray. So I have it quite often, especially if you use Ada and it's a little stiff, you'll find that the end that's hanging is always getting frayed. And this works great for 1 strand or 2, and I'm going to show you both ways on how to secure your thread so that you will not have to worry about all the fraying, and you can use your thread all the way up to your needle without losing the needle, losing the thread that's on your needle, the floss, because I had that happen when I'm stitching and all of a sudden my needle pulls out and I have to re-thread it again, which becomes frustrating. And this technique will keep, number 1, a minimal fray on your thread, and it will also help you not lose your thread from your needle. So what you do is, let's talk about if you're a 1 strand. If you stitch with 1 strand, you're going to loop your thread around, stick it through your needle. Do not let the thread come through the needle. You're going to pull it enough so you can put the bottom of your needle through the thread, and then pull the long length. Now the short length, you can make it as short as you want. So if I wanted to shorten this down to that little bit, I can do that and just pull. And it locks on. Now I will tell you, if you're doing this technique and you've got a length of thread, your stitching at first is going to be really long pulls. But in the end it's worth it, because your thread's not fraying and you're not losing your thread. You can certainly stitch in shorter lengths if you like, but this is the way I do it so I don't lose my needle. Now I will tell you that if you're locking your threads on your needle, you don't want to do that if you are doing just little spurts of stitching and then changing colors constantly, because then you'll have to take this off and back on again, and could get aggravating unless you have multiple needles that you're stitching with. Now if you want to remove the thread from the needle, you can just stick another needle under it and pull it up, and there you go. For people that stitch with 2 strands, like I do quite often, I do the same thing. I loop it on there. So I'm going to take my 2 ends, sorry I got to wet it, and I'm going to put it through my needle. Maybe, hold on. I'm going to put it through my needle. I'm going to pull it all the way up until my loop is up by my needle. I'm going to put my needle through the hole and pull. And there you go. You're looped on there. You got 2 strands. Works really well. And what I love about this is that when you're stitching this way, especially if you stitch with 2 strands, I know I always notice that as the threads get smaller, one end of the strand, the thread will always get shorter than the other as you're going. Doing it this way, neither get shorter. They stay even like this as you're pulling. And you can actually stitch all the way up till you got very little thread left. And then end off your thread and cut it. So it works really well. This also works really well with specialty threads. Now, specialty threads are a pain to work with. And one of the reasons is you cannot keep them from fraying. They fray really quickly, and to keep them on the needle. So I do the same thing with specialty threads. So this is cry neck. This is number 4 braid, and I have a length of it that I've cut off. And I'm going to do a loop on my needle. And again, you can do this with 1 thread, 2 threads. It doesn't matter. But I'm going to thread my needle. So I'm going to grab a bunch. I'm going to pull that through. I'm going to pull this one through. And then I'm going to go the opposite way and thread it back. Now, if you can get both ends, or if you can get it to go up and back with just a loop, well, bravo to you. I have to do it this way because I cannot get it to do anything I want it to do. There it is. There's my loop. I'm going to take it, make sure that my threads don't go out, pull it over my needle, pull this down, and of course, if I want, I can make that a lot shorter and then pull, and it's locked on there. You're not going to lose your thread. It's not going to fray up on the end. The only thing that's going to fray is this little bit on the end. And the rest of it will stay looking beautiful until you're finished stitching. And it works fabulous. So again, if you want to remove it from the needle, of course, you can just take your other needle and remove it. Nope, can't pick that one up either. And I can just unlock it. And there you go. So I hope that helps somebody with working with floss and knowing which way the grain goes and how to lock it onto your needle so that you don't have trouble with it and it just, your stitching, you will see a marked difference in it. Give it a try, a sample stitch on something, and see how it works for you. You may find that your stitches lay flatter, especially if you're doing 2 threads and you've got it locked onto your needle because the 2 threads stay together at all times. So they lock on and they lock back perfectly instead of them being both loose on there and being able to adjust. So I hope that helps you with working with thread and your needle and what works. The next thing I want to talk about is Weeks Dye Works. So I know some people have talked about Weeks, these little tabs you can get on Amazon. And theirs are a little different than mine. These, we actually have these similar at work, and they're just sticky tabs. And you can stick them. They got this little hole you can pull off. And it has a sticky back tab to it. And you just peel that off and stick it to the back of your Weeks Dye Works floss. Now I cut these in half. So this white strip, I will cut it in half. so that it doesn't go over the hole. So there, if I put it on, it's not going to go into my floss, and it will still stick fabulously. And they're not as wide. The other ones that people show you, they're wider, and I kind of like this smaller one. It's just less intrusive to me. And these can be found on Amazon, and I will put a link below. I am not affiliated with Amazon, so I don't get anything for this, but I'll put a link below on where you can order these if you haven't already ordered the other ones. And I just like the way these fit on there. And all my Weeks Dye Works now hangs on a word went right out of my head, on a ring, either a metal ring or one of the flexi rings, and they hang in their home on my wall and with those as well. So that's another tip. I will talk about, just for a minute, about different fabrics and threads. I have stitched on everything from 40 count linen all the way down to 11 count Aida, and I go anywhere in between Lugana, linen, even weave, Aida. And I do find that the fabric, sometimes the fabric and the floss just don't work well together. I will be stitching something and I will see that, and especially when I'm stitching on linen, that your stitches just don't look right. They come out all wonky and all different, and looping your thread will be one way of correcting that issue when you do two. Now, if you're stitching with one, it isn't going to matter whatsoever, but if you're stitching with two strands, it does help with that, where if you're on linen, your stitches look all wonky because you have flubs and everything. And I did do a video, and I'll post my link down below for my videos, my how-to videos, and in there you'll find one on how to remove slubs from linen. It is an excellent video. It shows you how to remove the slubs. It will not hurt your linen whatsoever, but if you got a big bulky piece of slub in your way and you don't want that to show through on your stitching, you can remove them. You have to be careful with it. I explain exactly how to do it, and I have done it for years and it works fabulously. So if you, the fabric, if you're having trouble with the way your thread's looking in your fabric, you may need to just switch fabrics or try one of these techniques, but I do it as well. I find that my threads and my fabrics sometimes just don't like to work together well. So when we're talking about fabrics, I always zigzag all my fabrics. If they don't come pre-done or I'm cutting a fabric, I always zigzag my fabrics. Now, if you don't have a sewing machine and you want a way that you can prevent your fabric from fraying, I'm going to give you a couple of tips here now. The first thing is fray check. You can pick this up at Walmart, at Joann's, anywhere, and it's basically, you put it on the edge of your fabric. So you run this along your edge of your fabric and let it dry, and it'll keep your fabric from fraying. It is an awesome product. I've used it for years, but I will tell you there's a note on the back, which I just laughed at. It says, do not put in eye. So that means somewhere down the line, some stitcher put this on their fabric and then touch their eye with this on their fingers. So again, do not put this in your eyes, your mouth, anything else. If you get it on your hands, go wash your hands, because it is, you know, made with chemicals and stuff. You don't want to put that stuff in your mouth or your eyes. But I love that they put it in big writing here. Do not put in your eye. So fray check is awesome. There's another one called fray something. You'll find them. They're there. This one's Dritz. But they're awesome. But if you don't have that, you can stitch around your edge. Now I did this in, and I wasn't neat about it either. I did this in pearl cotton so you could see it, and you can just whip stitch around your edge. So as I did here, you can blanket stitch around your edge. You don't know how to blanket stitch? YouTube is your resource for that. You can look up the stitch, blanket stitch, and it looks like this, not as bulky when you're using, or here I did it just in floss and did a whip stitch, and it'll hold my fabric so I don't have to worry about it fraying. So you can do these things if you don't have to use tape. I'm not a fan of using tape on my pieces because the tape, the glue is a chemical, and you don't know how that will react even after you pull it off, unless you're cutting it off, how it will react years down the road. And this is one of my whips that I'll show in my next episode, but I was just demonstrating how to whip stitch, and like I said, you don't have to be perfect about it. Blanket stitching. This is floss doing a whip stitch, and it will hold it from fraying. It's not going to fray. Like this is fraying right here, but it's not going to go any further because it's held by the stitch. So that is a easy way to keep your threads or your fabric from fraying. Okay, so the next thing I want to talk about, and I'm looking on my list here because I don't want to forget, is how I travel with my needles and scissors. So this is a needle case, or not, it's a manicure case, sorry. It is my needle case, but it's a manicure case. And you can get these off of anywhere. I got these, and this one's a little sparkly. I got these after Christmas sale on Walmart. They're normally $3 for the manicure set, and I got them for $1.50. You can go on Temu, I think. You can go on other sites and order these, and they're not that expensive. Normally I see them $3 to $5, and you get the manicure set, but I remove them. And what I do is I keep the loops on one side, and this is not a good pair of scissors to put in here, but you put your scissors in. I keep the tweezers in there. And on this side, I put a piece of magnet so that I can put my needles on it. And the magnet you can get at Lowe's or Walmart, Home Depot, and it's called magnetic vent cover. And they come in big strips. I think it's like maybe 8 or 9 by 15, and you get 2 in a pack, and they're not that expensive at all, under $5, $5, a little under, and you can cut them to any size you want. So I take out all the loops from this side, I cut them all out, and I put in and glue in this magnetic strip. So now I have a place to store my needles. I have tweezers if I need them. Normally I will keep the pair of scissors that comes in the kit until it gets where it doesn't cut floss well, and I'll get rid of it, and then I'll put one of my actual needles in, or one of my regular scissors in it, one of the smaller ones. And it works great, and I can keep this in every project. And I always have my needle, my scissors, and a tweezers with me at all time if I'm not carrying my whole gamut of supplies. So these work great. You can look at. Sorry about that interruption. That was my husband calling, so I had to pause the video. Okay, so I showed you my little travel case that I use for my projects, and I have like probably 12 or 14 of these. I get them when they're on clearance, and they work really well, so I love that. The other way I store my travel supplies are in eyeglass cases. So you'll see the first one here. You can see I have a HOD sticker on it. Is all of my needles that I have. Well, not all of them. There's a good part of them. And I have tweezers in here as well. I've got beading needles in here in case I need them. And I have Nemo thread, which I sometimes use for beading. Another needle threader in here. So I keep this by my desk, so if I need a needle for something, it's there. And then the second one I use, this is a old Coach case that I don't use anymore. So when I put a flag on the top, so I'd know this is the top of the box. And as you flip it open, this thing has a plethora of stuff in it. So I have my magnet, my floor magnet, my reaching magnet, in case I drop a needle. This thing extends all the way out, and it'll search for a magnet. You see how it's moving it and picks it up? So if you lose your needle on the floor or on the sofa, you certainly can just glide this and it'll automatically pick it up. So I love that tool. If you don't have that, definitely need to find one of those. I keep tweezers in here. That's a sheath for scissors. So that's in there. That's not important. I also have beading needles in here. These are the colored ones by the Beadsmith. I have needles that are loose that shouldn't be. I have Thread Heaven, which I still have. I haven't used it up yet, but I'm learning to use this a lot, especially in kitted kits, actually, like dimensions kits and other things, because their floss is not as nice. I have a Russian kit, which is my owl kit, and the thread seems to be a little fuzzy and stuff, so when I run my Thread Heaven through it, it really works well. I have this, which is a leather thimble, so if I need to press a needle or it's stuck or something, I have that. These are the scissors that came in the manicure set, so of course I still have a pair of those. They work for a while and then they get dull. I have a pack of needles. They're 28 count that I got off of Amazon, 100 needles. It was an excellent price. They're gold eye needles. So, and they work pretty good. I don't have a problem with them. I have these here, which are actually small knitting needles. They go onto the tip of the knitting needle so it doesn't poke anything. I use these for my scissors. So I put the end of my scissor in my project bag. I don't have to worry about it poking anything. It goes on there quite well, and then you can pull it off. But these are awesome. So I have several of those in there. These are the bigger ones. I don't really use them, but they do work as well to keep your needle from, or your scissors from poking anything. I have another needle threader. That's the wire one that's a little thinner. And I have this little tool, which I absolutely love. This is a seam fix. This comes in two sizes. This is the small one, and you can get the regular sized one. I have two of these small ones because I absolutely love them. If I have to pick out threads and frog, this is what I use to pull the threads out, or I can cut them, either or. But this is great for pulling because if I use my needle to pull threads out, so I can go back and restitch, my needle sometimes gets bent with the pulling. So I've learned that I need to use this product. It is much stronger and sturdier. It'll go under the threads and pull it up for me. Just don't run your thread into the cutter down here. I got this mess all over, don't I? So you don't want to run your thread down to the cutter here, but just on the tip of it, on this arm that's sticking out, and just pull your threads out. Once you pull your threads out, and you see all that fuzzy that's left behind, especially if you're using a dark thread or using a red thread, this little nubby end will pull all those threads out. So it will, let me grab this. You will rub it on your fabric wherever your threads, you can see the color of your threads. You just rub back and forth, or you can do like that. And you do both sides, flip it over, do the other side, and you'll see all the fuzzies will be on the edge of this little nub, and you'll pull them off. And it's great. It takes all that fuzzy, especially if you're stitching in black or something, and you pick it out, you can see all the black. This will work to take it out. So this is an awesome thing. And I have a large one that I used for actual sewing, and I have two of these little mini ones that I use for my cross stitch. So that's what I have in these little things. I keep all my little things. This particular container goes by my stitching chair. Get all this stuff back in there. And this one here stays in my craft room because if I need a needle and I'm not at my stitching chair, I have more needles here that I can pull from. So you can use any kind of glass case, eyeglass case or anything. I like them because this, especially these kind, because it's spring open and closed. I don't have to worry about anything falling out of it. This one I have to make sure that I latch it because if I don't, it's gonna go flying out. But these spring action ones, they are awesome. Okay, I think that might be just about it. The only other thing I want to say for newbies and people that haven't done a lot of stitching is to be careful with white floss, especially if you're stitching next to red and you're using overdyes. And even if you're not using overdyes and you're doing DMC, I've seen red bleed on DMC as well. So you want to be very careful, and you want to stitch, if you're stitching red and white next to each other, you want to stitch your white floss first before you stitch the red, because as you're pulling the red through, the red's only going to get on the very edge of the white, and you're not going to notice it when they're buttoned like this. But if you stitch your red first and you're pulling your white through past that red time and time again, you're going to start seeing the red pick up very faintly into a pinky color into your thread. And you really won't notice it until you got a whole bunch stitched. And then you look at it and you're like, it's not white anymore. It's more of a pink or a bashful color, or it's very faint, but you can tell your thread's no longer white. So be careful when you're stitching, especially red and white together. I haven't seen it happen with any other color, but it seems to be, for me, I've seen it several times before I realized I need to stop doing that, is stitching your red first and then stitching your white after. Always stitch white first, red second. Okay, I think that's it. I can't think of anything else. I do always share some tips and tricks on my videos. So I shouldn't say always. I do it quite regularly, and I will share little tips and tricks as I find them along the way. And lots of people enjoy seeing those. They have helped several stitchers, so that is awesome. Oh, and I did want to share one other thing. If you are a hoop stitcher, this is what I normally stitch with. I normally stitch with these little 5-inch spring action hoops. They have been my favorite for years and years. And I always hunt down this 5-inch size because I feel like that's the size that I'm most comfortable holding without it being too heavy to hold my stitching. But recently I made a change because I was thinking that my hoops weren't holding my fabric as tight as it used to. I would see it get a little bit loose and I'd have to readjust and stuff. And I was like, this is going to drive me crazy. I need to find something that will work better. Now, I did try the Nurge hoops and they're fine, but they do not feel comfortable to me. And I find that, I had the little turn, the little nozzle thing to turn it, to tighten it and stuff. After a while, it starts to hurt my fingers. So what I switched to was Morgan hoops. Now this is a Morgan hoop, but this hoop here has these little posts because it is part of a 2-part set. And I'm only using this part right now. I've ordered some others of these, but they haven't shown up yet. But I love this. It holds fabric super tight. And what I do love about it is that, as you can see, this is easy to unscrew, unlock it. It has the groove here on the inside, and then you can see here is the groove, and it's a deeper groove than the Nurge. I have not had any problems with it damaging any of my stitching or my fabric. And one of the best parts is if you don't like screwing these things, and I wish I had a piece of fabric to throw it in it so I could show you. No, let me see. Do I have a piece of fabric? Not a thing next to me. This won't fit because it's not big enough. Anyway, I got tired of screwing these down because it does spread out and screw. I found this little attachment, this little tool that helps me crank this down. And it just goes on and you twist like this by hand and it locks it. And it is an awesome little tool. You can look in stores that do punch needle. They might carry this little tool. I can't remember what it's called. If I can figure out where the link is to this, where I bought it, I will certainly post it below. My Morgan hoops, I just ordered 2 sizes from Joann.com, but it's been 10 days and it still hasn't shipped, which is irritating to me. So I've left them a message to find out what's going on with my order. But in the meantime, I'm going to use this one. And then these are, the Morgan hoops are also used for punch needle. So that's how I ended up with this little tool, because I would be trying to crank that thing down doing my punch needle and it would start bothering my hand, just like that little screw thing does. But this is much bigger. It's made out of some kind of PVC. And if you know somebody that's a little handy, ladies, you might be able to find a gentleman friend that can get a little PVC, cut a slit in it, glue a handle to it, and you're good to go and not spend the probably $18, probably somewhere between $15 and $20 for this little piece of plastic, but it'll save my hand. So I wanted to share that as well. Okay, I think that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found something that was of interest to you that might help you along the way, something you will try and see how it works for you. Let me know in the comments below if you found this content interesting, what you found the most interesting, what else would you like to see as far as tips and tricks and techniques. Please check out my link below to all of my how-to videos, and you'll see that I have one for fabric dyeing, removing the slubs. There's several others. I can't think. I have a couple of tutorials on how to finish stockings, how to finish the Prairie Schooler Santas, all sorts of different things. So check that out below, and then let me know if any of these tips worked for you. You tried them, you liked them, you tried them and you didn't like them, or it didn't work for you. Let me know. Let me know your thoughts. What do you think is a great tip that needs to be shared with the stitchy world that you do that maybe other people don't know about? So share all that information below. If you have questions, please post them below. I'll be glad to answer any of your questions. And I will see you on the next Flosstube update. Have a great day. Bye.